Welcome back, Principal Matters podcast listeners. So excited today to share with you one of the friends that I've met along the way with my work with ASCD and presenting at conferences. LaVonna Roth is here with us today. Hi, LaVonna.
Hi, Jen. It is so great to be here. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation. And I am going to open with your bio, but then I'm going to tell a story about the first time our paths crossed. LaVonna has almost 20 years of experience speaking on 4 different continents. And LaVonna helps leaders across various industries ditch self-doubt, break barriers, and step boldly into their shine. We're going to talk about your signature shine framework today, LaVonna, in which you draw on emotional intelligence, brain sciences, and wellness to create impactful and transformative experiences. So we have a lot to cover today. I first met you, LaVonna. There would be no way you'd remember this, but it's probably been, 8 or 9 years ago, and I had just published my first book. So I was, so young and so excited, and I went to an ASCD conference and you were presenting, and what struck me about your presentation, you weren't just lecturing to principals. You were talking about the the human side of this work and how self-doubt can creep in. You actually told a story that has stuck with me about some struggles your daughter had in school and how she was able to overcome them. So many years ago, but why don't you tell us about yourself, both professionally and maybe your life outside of work?
Okay. Is there life outside of work for
I
any
know.
of No, we try. Jen, first of all, I think that's super cool that you remember that moment.
Yep.
So people ask sometimes, what superpower would you want if you could have one? And I used to say flying, like to be able to be like a bird. But now I've been saying over the past like month, my superpower would be to remember everybody's face and name. Like
Yes.
that's what I want, because people are so important to me. And that's a perfect example that I wish I could say, I remember that exact moment. So, you know,
Right.
dug back in the cobwebs we could.
But let me interject and
Yes.
say I take a different approach to that story I told, which is you never know, right? There you were presenting. It was probably a crowd of people that you weren't going to meet. I didn't come up and shake your hand after, but you never know about the people. And this applies to principals doing their work. People walking around that you've said something or told a story or entered a room with a positive aura that they carry with them. So you don't need to know the faces, LaVonna, is what I'm saying. You can still make an impact, and that applies to anybody doing this work.
No, I appreciate that. Appreciate that because I do remember a guy sitting on the plane one time, and he learned what I did, and he said, "Oh, I used to own a business too." And at one point, he said, "Can I give you a piece of advice?" And I said, "Of course, I'm always open to that." And he said, "Dream big," because the
Mm,
mistake I'd made was I didn't dream big enough. And that man I talked to this day, and this was probably 12, 15 years ago, has no idea. So I love that the
right,
impact, and that's
right.
definitely a goal of mine. So when I look at professional, my path was, 10 years as a teacher, elementary and secondary. And then I worked for multiple companies where I had got, at the time, didn't realize what was happening. I mean, I knew I was getting sales experience. I knew I became business development manager. Did not know how this would all come into play later because I didn't own a business at the time. I went through a layoff, so I know what that was felt like and how that was handled. And it's just the most horrible feeling, and don't ever want that to happen to anyone, but obviously it does. And then ended up working for a company that I was screamed at and cussed out and just
Uh,
again treated not in a way that I feel humans should be treated. And
right.
so I think it could have been held a lot better, done a lot better. However, with that said, I live it this way. I might not be doing what I'm doing today if it hadn't been for that last experience of being yelled at. I was the eighth person in 10 months in my position. And so they are the reason I jumped. And maybe I would have at some point, but I don't think it would have been at that moment because I had never thought about working for myself. And there's a whole other piece that comes with that. I know you know that, Jen, that, own your business. There's a lot that comes with that. That's not always the fun, the glory, the glam by any means. But at the same time, it allowed me to give me the freedom to treat people how I want to treat people. And in full transparency, sometimes I win at that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, LaVonna, you are
Right.
tired or your patience, you need to apologize and reflect on how would you handle that differently next time so that I hopefully do. So
Right.
that's a lot of the professional, personal. I am married. So I am married to a retired elementary principal. And I have 3 children total. So one biologically, my daughter is 25 and in real estate doing incredible work. I just adore that girl. that young lady. And then I have 2 bonus kids. I don't like the word stepkids, but bonus kids because they are a bonus in my life, and that is one of them is 29, and she's getting her PhD in animal sciences, and my, bonus son is the oldest, and he is a medical doctor here in Florida.
Wow. So you have quite an accomplished family there, and really, it does speak, I think, to the power of education. And you live with a retired elementary principal. You have taught. You've done a lot of work with educators, but outside of education as well. Really talking about leadership and this shine framework. So I want to give you the mic, so to speak. Tell us about the shine framework and how educators, our listeners are principals. So how this applies to their work each and every day.
I love this. I look at leadership as not necessarily a title, but if you lead people, you make an impact, you are a leader. As administrators, you do have a responsibility and held accountable. Like I learned that very quickly watching my husband and even being a teacher leader and being behind the scenes and interviewing and hiring and talking about policies and such with administrators who were having me get ready to be an administrator because I do have the degree. I just never actually served in the role. And so you mentioned earlier about my daughter's experience. I think about my own experience. I think about my students and the ones that were not successful in the traditional classroom. I am not your traditional student. I did not have the best of grades. I get into college and I was put on probation to be kicked out. So I just had this belief that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't smart
Mhm,
enough. And my
mhm.
daughter goes through this. Students go through this. Leaders go through this. I have the privilege of working with so many leaders now, and that imposter syndrome is real.
Yes.
And it's fascinating because so many experience that and don't have the belief in themselves, which is what shine is all about. And so the word was not originally shine, it was actually smart. And that was because I was going after an education, what we define as smart. However, along the way, somebody said to me, "You'll never change the definition of smart in education." Part of my
Mm.
personality was like, yep, watch me. Right? That little rebellious, that little, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I've been here before where people doubted me. You watch, here I come. But then there's also the reality of, okay, let me think about this. And I'm grateful to that person, not in the moment, Jen, but I'm
Right.
that person. And I think about as principals, getting feedback sometimes we don't want to hear it in the moment. But it also can grow us as a leader. Not saying that we agree always with it, but does it get us to look at a different perspective and a different lens? And that's when Shine came about. And so I'll briefly tell you what the framework stands for. It is a framework, it is not a program. It's not something you implement, it is something you integrate into what you're already doing to just elevate. And so Essence Shine is self, and we really focus on what are your strengths, gifts, skills, talents. That's that a lot of that social emotional or that emotional intelligence comes into play with that. Also, even your self-care. So anything has to do with self falls into that, but we primarily focus heavily on what are the strengths of students, strengths of you as a leader, strengths of those you serve and on your staff, your family. It applies everywhere. H is heart. What are your passions? So I didn't use P for passion because that's spine. It doesn't work the
Right.
same. So we're going to go for shine. So
Right.
right? Yeah, so it's all about heart. What lights you up? Like, what gives you that energy? What do you love to do? But also being aware of what drains you. Like, as since this is for principals, I'll share with you, it is not uncommon for my husband when he was a principal to text me at least once a week the words, "I quit." Some of
Right.
you maybe raising your hand saying, "Yes, that's me," right? But what I would say to him is, "When's the last time you were in the VPK classroom?" And those initials are for varied abilities at pre-K.
Mhm.
And so he would go in and see the challenges that these children were facing, yet had smiles on their face. And that
Right.
reminded him of why he was doing what he was doing. So are we embedding that in again, personally, professionally? I and Shine is inspire. So how do we inspire others? How do we stay inspired? Because you have this great package over here of your strengths and your passions, but life is going to throw curveballs. And so believe we have the responsibility to ourselves to be inspired, not expecting others to do that for us, but at the same time, how do we support others in being inspired when they don't feel it? And in Shine is navigate. It's you putting everything I've been talking about into action. It is how do we make this come to fruition? For example, I just had right before this podcast, I had team over and the Ignite Your Shine team. We are now doing once a quarter. What are our dreams? And sharing that and what are steps are we taking? What are the barriers we're facing? What do we want to have happen? And so to me, that's the end for navigate. Like we can talk about all these things all day long, but are we putting it into practice in our life? So reflecting on leadership, what kind of leader do you want to be? are you taking a moment to say, this is when I rocked it out, and be owning that and be proud of that and saying, okay, and why did I rock it out? Like, how do I keep those things going? But then what did I not do as well as I would like to? Or what changes? So that navigate is the work. It's the part of
Right.
putting everything. And then the final E is exceptional, because you, by doing all of these things, you're becoming the exceptional leader, exceptional person, exceptional family member that you were meant to be, not anyone else, who you were meant to be.
And here's why I love that framework. It can apply to anyone. You do a lot of work, again, with that imposter syndrome and talking about talented women and underrepresented voices who are being held back in leadership roles. Yes, absolutely. But this could apply to someone who doesn't feel like they're being held back, somebody who's living their best leadership life. Still, we can kind of incorporate that shine framework into our own mindsets. And for listeners, you can, I'm going to say this at the end of this episode as well, but igniteyoursHine.com. There's a button right there at the top of the page that says the Shine Framework. So if you missed any of what LaVonna just said, please go to her website and you can learn more about that. So how did you get to this place, LaVonna? How did you think, oh wait, we need a framework for this and we need specific actions to go for Shine? Tell us how you got here.
Yeah, again, everything's unplanned.
Right,
Beginning,
right.
right? And then you have these ideas and things that come fruition, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is like feeding me, and I want to do more of this. And I know we all as humans want to make an impact, to know that we made a difference. And so it's yeah, so with Shine in particular, it's been an entire journey. Um, can you rephrase it or tell me the question
Yeah.
again? I just went blank.
Yes, absolutely. I'm thinking about, a lot of okay, let me back up. I'm going to say it. I'm going to weave in what we talked about a little bit offline. We were talking about the work that you do and consulting and talking with different groups. It's a lot of work. There's so much that goes into that. You don't just walk up into a front of a room and grab a microphone and say profound things. It's a lot of thinking and learning and work. How did you develop Shine? What led you there?
Yes, okay, thank you. It was all experiences, and just people who came up and would say things to me. Like, so for example, Shine was actually created for students. It
Mm,
was meant for teachers to put into classrooms with students. But when I would speak at pre-planning days, or I also spoke for financial institutions, I've spoken for athletes, like you name it. It's that they were coming up, military, police, coming up and saying, "You have no idea how badly I needed this." And I
mhm.
was like, "Wait a minute." I'm thinking students, because I also want to make that impact younger and get that belief sooner, instead of like you get into adulthood and you start learning, and by the time you're 50, you're like, okay, I'm starting to think I might be figuring this out, versus way younger. But then it hit me that if our adults in the school building, or our adults leading teams in a leadership role, do not feel this way about themselves, then how do they draw it and create that kind of culture within their own building or offices? And that's when that shift came. And so it's been incredible working with, like you said, it fits everybody, which is one of my greatest challenges, because
Right.
I don't like it is for, if you are human, which you are, all of anyone listening to this, then it is for you, because it is about how you want to be in that exceptional person. That's the challenge though from a business perspective. Because there's even a thing with marketing that says if you speak to everybody, you speak to no one.
Mhm.
So it's like,
Mhm.
but this walk this line, because some people are like, who you need to be working with? You need to be working with women who have been battered. Yes. And then you have someone else come out, you need to be working with, and it's constant. I'm like, I know, but there, how do we, like, how is that possibly done? So
Right.
we are focusing on women in leadership, as you mentioned, and underrepresented voices in particular. Just that's just where we want to put our strong, like, time in.
Right.
Our efforts, are some of our philanthropy work is
Right.
there's been a slide backwards. And so I had to pay attention to where's my heart really. Like, there are areas, like, people have said you need to go into pharmaceuticals and speak to pharmaceutical groups. I'll be straight honest, I would do that, yes, but that's not where my heart is.
Right.
Right, so it's like looking at my own, we try to live Shine as a team, like, what are my strengths? What is my heart? What are my passions?
Right.
And if we're gonna do this work, because it's not easy,
Right.
how do we do it? What do we
Well,
focus?
and you served me up a softball there because my next question I was going to ask you about career bending moments and the reason I was going to ask you is I've seen you speak multiple times. You do a really beautiful job of weaving in stories of your own experiences as a teacher, as a leader, talking to pharmaceutical groups, talking to athletes. You have a lot of experiences that apply to a lot of people. Um, Tell us about a career bending moment or two where you thought, okay, I need to be talking to people. I need to share a framework with them. What may have triggered you to say, "Okay, this is my journey?"
Again, experience is a process.
Mhm.
I actually have a very shy side to me. I've
Uh-huh.
come a very long way with that. But it was where I had major self-doubt.
Mhm.
But one interesting thing I will say though, while I say that, is I've also not ever let a fear stop me entirely. Now it may prolonged me, right, to actually moving forward to actually do it, but it has never actually stopped me. I actually have a Simone Biles quote sitting right here on my desk, and it says, "I'd rather regret, I'll start over. I'd rather regret the risks that didn't work out than the chances I didn't take at all."
Mhm.
And when I read that, I knew that that's how I've been living my life. It's just she said it a lot more eloquently.
Right.
But I had when I was in the district, in Hillsborough County, the social studies supervisor came to me and she said, "Hey, we want you to train for the social studies department." And I mean, I'm talking Jen, in my head, I was like, "Absolutely not. Heck no." Like, there might have been stronger words than that.
Mhm.
But she was a mentor and somebody I admired. Didn't want to let her down. So I said, "Absolutely." I was like, "Sure. How
Right.
do I do this?" And the first time I did it, I got feedback that I was like, "Oh, okay, so you don't stink." Like,
Uh,
"Yeah, maybe you could do this," you know? And she kept giving more and more opportunities. And then I was approached at one point to start training for a publisher, and they came to me and they're like, "We want you to write books because you already have it, you're already doing it." And it was so basically, I go back to it was when others believed in me and gave me the experience because I never in a million years, like somebody literally just this past week in Missouri said to me, "I could never do what you do, like absolutely not." And I was like, "But you could. You could."
right.
Because I was that person.
LaVonna, what is this about this imposter syndrome? I'm I'm doing some executive coaching, which I love, one-to-one work, with women. Love it. I was talking to a woman last week. It was our first session. She was phenomenal, powerful, smart, on point, and she got emotional and she said, "I just have imposter syndrome. I can't get over it." And I said, "Sweetheart, I see nothing missing here, nothing." I wonder why do you find that in education, imposter syndrome is more, prolific because we have so many critics, or is this everywhere?
I'm gonna say everywhere.
Mm,
Yes, I think it's a societal thing.
okay.
I do. I think we have been especially, I'm gonna say in like US with our, capitalism, and
Right,
just really pushing for you have to do more, you have to do more, you have to do more. I mean, the words hustle, grind, all of those things, self-sacrifice.
right.
So we have been basically, for lack of a better term, or maybe it is the term, brainwashed
Right.
to think in this direction.
I'm really glad you said that. It just changed my own thinking because I think you're right. As a society in the US, capitalism reigns supreme. And so therefore the measure is money earned. And for principals, the measure I think is money earned plus are we liked? And in a school of 200, 400, 800, 1200, 2000 people, if you're measuring yourself if you're liked, of course we all have imposter syndrome because of course not everybody likes us, right? It's we're measuring ourselves on impossible standards.
Yep. And we know this, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
the interesting part, like, we know this, yet we
Right.
still go, "Wow, I don't know if I'm good enough," because it's always that next mile marker. I was saying that this morning, like, it's interesting how 1,000,000 is the mile marker, when I have 1,000,000 followers, when I make $1,000,000, when I live in a $1,000,000 house, like, what? I
Right.
we need to backpedal this, and so I feel like when it comes to imposter syndrome, it has to do with perspective, and
Mhm.
it's perspective shifting. And
Right.
so it can even be as simple as asking yourself, like, the one who said, like, she's done all these things, but then said to you, "I have imposter syndrome." Why do you have imposter syndrome? Like, why do you feel? And we have to keep asking these kinds of questions till we get to the core.
Mhm.
Like for me, I can tell you the core. It goes back to childhood and specific things in childhood. So I don't, I feel weird saying this, but I don't have imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
And I think it's because of Shine, to be honest with you.
Right.
But I had to do my own immense work. I had to go into asking myself and not be afraid to say, why do you feel you're not good enough? Why do you feel that you don't deserve it? Why do you feel that
Right.
you also can't have that? And most importantly, and this I've asked this to probably 600, 700 women at this point. I have said to them, I want you to list everything that you have done, like everything that you see as a measure of success for you. And the goal was, I wanted them to say, like, this is how I measure success. And then, is that what I'm actually, how I'm living my life? And I didn't mean to do this, but the question came out, and I ask it every time now. Raise your hand if that had to do with the number of letters because of the degrees that you have behind your name. Out of these 6 to 700 women, Jen, not one has raised their hand that they wrote that down. Not one. But yet
Interesting.
I know we measure, "Whoa, I don't have a doctorate. Oh, I
Right.
probably should get a doctorate so that I'm enough." Right? And somebody does, it doesn't mean they go do it because of that. But I have reflected on this because somebody once said to me, "LaVonna, you won't be a consultant. You won't be out speaking consulting unless you get a doctorate."
Huh.
Well, here we are.
All right.
I mean, I've been doing this since what, 2008?
Right.
I don't have a doctorate.
Right. Well, that speaks to comparative culture, which is alive and well in any sort of leadership situation. We're all comparing ourselves to other people, and I'm sure you have people come up to you and say, "I want to do what you do. How can I do that? How can I write a book? How can I go speak to big groups?" And because they're measuring themselves against you, but again, what's hidden there is all the work that went into that. And social media. We don't even need to point this out. Constantly being compared to other people and feeling that we're not good enough because we don't have that doctorate or we don't have that job or we don't have those contracts or whatever it is.
Yes. Yes. But the beauty of this is that we should be defining our own success.
Exactly.
Right? Like, I don't want to do a podcast, and I am
Right.
so grateful for those that do. I
Right.
don't sit here and go, LaVonna, you're pretty much a failure because you haven't even started a podcast yet." And I have
Right.
told so many times to start a podcast, and
Right.
maybe someday I'll change my mind. That's the beauty of this, right? But for now, I could get to go like, "Jen, you're doing an amazing job in reaching leaders and making a difference all the time by creating this podcast that people get to learn from other people." But it doesn't mean that I have to do that.
Exactly.
Right? And so if you don't wanna write a book, don't write a book. If you
You
don't
know
want.
what?
Yeah,
Th- This is that okay, listeners, this is a critical conversation we're having right here. I'm so glad you said that. You're right. We don't all need to have a podcast. We don't all need to write a book. We don't all need to get a doctorate. It's about our own internal measures. That's the point, right? We're in so many different situations doing so many different things, but yet we're all walking around feeling pretty lousy because we didn't do all the things.
yes, and no one has done all the things. Right?
Right.
Look at the administrator who the achievement of the scores in that school is out of this world. You've got the teachers who create the culture that there's a wait list. People want to be teaching in that school or working in that school. You've got the administrators doing this and this and this and all those things we list that, but we're not. Okay, if we walk into a building, we're like, "No, I actually think, LaVonna, I'm gonna disagree with you. I think this building has it all." But at what cost?
Right.
Like, does that
Right.
administrator have a home life, for example? Right? Is there balance? Because like the conversation we said this morning, like at some point, I'm going to retire. Everybody in here will retire unless, something happens before that.
Right.
But I don't want my whole identity to have been what I have poured my passion into because also don't want to lose that. Like that's not all of who I am. And so
Right.
if I can build my personal life, like I'm all about experiences. Like I go do things that, okay, I don't know about this. I don't know if I really love this, believe in this, want this, but I'm going to go do it because I don't know if I don't. And along the way, when I do it, I actually learn about me and the things that I
Right.
want. And so in order to create this life, in leadership as an administrator or outside of the school, like it's not just about balance so you don't burn out, it is, but it's also
Right.
about you creating this, like, what you want, and I
Right.
don't think we'll ever say, "I have no regrets," because we will,
Right.
but
Right. So
we minimize that.
so I'm by the way, the reason that you don't need a podcast is so many of us want you on our podcasts and you do have a beautiful radio voice. So I'm just going to leave that right there, but let me also ask you this question. You
Okay.
talk with a lot of administrators. You know how stressful and complicated the work can be. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see school leaders facing these days?
Ho, ho, ho.
Yeah.
Um, the board
Yeah.
comes up a lot, not always in alignment.
Yep.
Policies that go with a focus of whether it's political policies, that
Mhm.
is a huge reality of what I'm hearing right now. Policies, even with how you should run your classroom,
Mhm.
curriculum that should be put into place, even removal of programs. You
Right,
know, I face that a lot with whether it's the fine arts that's being removed because of budget and such, but understand that's also how the brain learns. So we're removing, and plus we reach another group of students who are not academically successful, such as me.
right,
I was in the band, and so it gives other opportunities, and really going back to the core, which is what I'm going to say that it boils down to, is the core of why you got into education, and is it allowing you to do why you got into
right,
this? Or do you feel a system and other things are really hindering that? But
right.
those, I would say, the biggest ones right now.
And, as you listed those, I would agree with every single one, and I think there's a through line there about we feel we don't have control over any of those things. They're happening to us. And then I'm gonna bring us back to the SHINE framework, and listeners, I swear I'm not selling SHINE framework, it just works. It works in this scenario. So if I feel a loss of control, I can go through SHINE and maybe feel that I have a little bit more autonomy, at least in the small area where I'm working.
Yes, yes, because you can create that alignment, right?
Mhm,
So I can, as a leader, be thinking, okay, how do I want my school or my district to go? And these are the strengths that I bring to the table. And this is where my passions are. And then you have the same conversations. And there's so many conversations that can be had here, but let's just stick with the
mhm,
top part here with keeping it at the bare bones. So heart and passion, but I'm going to go back. I'm also going to do the same with staff, right? So if I am a principal in a building, I want to either go in with teams or even as a whole staff. Everyone write down what their strengths are. And I'll tell you, the first time you do this, because I see it all the time, people are stuck. They
mhm.
don't know what to put because that's not what we focus on. We focus on what we can't do so often. And instead, we're going to focus on what can we do? What do we bring to the table? Which, by the way, is now you're adding in, this is the value I do bring. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm the best, but by golly, I do have some value that I'm bringing here because I am good at this. So the person, for example, who says, I am so good at organization and I have a passion for spreadsheets. Jen, I need that person on my team because it is not a strength and I surely don't have a passion for it. So this is where the imposter syndrome again does not pop up because I am grateful for that person. And thank goodness, because I do bring things to the table and I can tell you what they are. Just like they should be bringing things to the table, telling what they are. But when we have these conversations, we come together, we're closer, we're more aligned. And so now, what if we're going back to what you said, like to be able to control, that
Mhm,
jumps us to the end on navigate. Like, so we are frustrated, morale is down, people are leaving education, we're burnt out, we have all these things, but we cannot control that. So
mhm.
what can we control? And one of the greatest things that I learned, and I put this in when I do deeper work with schools or districts, is it's called appreciative inquiry. And it's a type of question that you ask. So instead of me saying, what are the problems that we need to address and change here? What are the challenges that we're facing? And you can still do this. But instead of saying like and listing boom, all of the things that could like take up pages and pages, that's not what we want. Yet that's what we focused on was all the problems and the challenges. What you do is take a challenge though, and you apply appreciative inquiry. So if we're talking about, let's say, for example, if burnout is the issue, you're going to flip the question to appreciative inquire, when have we thrived at our best? And we start to list, when have we thrived? We thrived when people were aligned. We thrived when we all had a similar goal. We thrived when we appreciated each other in the low times and the high times. We thrived when, and you go through, because now you have a list of what you can control and focus on. And that was a big shift where I went, holy cow, it's asking the right question.
So principles, again, huge takeaway there. So many times we start with the deficit or we start with the problem, and we know, um, we know better, right? We know we need to start with the positives, with the gifts that we bring. LaVonna, you have a team. Before we even recorded today, a member of your team popped on to say hello, and you said, "Oh, she's so good at the things I'm not good at." And so I think recognizing you are very, very good at your things and she is very, very good at her things. And together you make a formidable team. And so I think when we apply that to the principalship or any work that happens in schools, if anybody's doing it alone, no wonder they have imposter syndrome because they think, well, I don't have the whole puzzle. And the answer is indeed you do not have the whole puzzle. You need people surrounding you to complete that puzzle.
Yes, and you shouldn't have all of it because
Right.
otherwise nobody's needed,
Well,
right?
and I just had a memory. I can't believe I didn't open with this, but I think about maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, you hosted a webinar. It was you did it free, and you said, anybody come. I will teach you how to maybe take the next step into consulting if you'd like. And I signed up, and it was an hour-long thing, and you kind of just talked the group of us through it. And I remember at the time walking away, and my takeaway was, know what you're good at. Don't dive into a whole other career or even a dream unless you know what you really want and what you're really passionate about. And so, listeners, we keep circling around this. If you have imposter syndrome, maybe you've not stopped to shine,
Yes, yes.
right?
Are you good at it? Do you wanna even do it?
Right. I think you asked that. I remember being like, "Oh, that's a pretty good question to start us off."
Yes, yes, and what you're talking about, I know, is because as educators, we get so many experiences, and educators are some of the most phenomenal people in the world because you can say to them today, federal mandate came down that you have to implement X, Y, and Z, and you have to start doing it tomorrow, and educators will do it. Like, at first, it's that shock moment of, "Wait, what?" And then all of a sudden, it comes together, and it's because educators also pitch in to support and to help
Mhm.
each other. So it's beautiful to watch when that happens, and I think that it's the downside that I was gonna say, though, is that because educators can figure it out and can do it, it doesn't mean it's where we should be. So I know
Right.
you're talking about more if somebody wants to go speaking and consulting, and yes, do, but what I see oftentimes is someone's like, "Well, I can do that. Well, I can train on that. Well, I can teach that. Well, I can support you in this," and they're 10 different things, which they could.
Right.
But is that one what you are the best at and good at doing?
Oh,
And should you be the person doing it? Could somebody else be serving better? So, like, I have no problem if I'm not the right fit or the shine message is not the right fit or they don't like my style as a speaker. Like I am not behind the podium. I want experiences. I'm down with you. We are doing experiences. I intentionally do that because I also align with the brain sciences. But with that, I may not be your kind of speaker. And I used to be like, "Oh gosh, what did I do? What's wrong with me? Okay, maybe I need to change." No. This
right.
is what I'm good at doing, and this is what I should be a fit for just like everybody
Right.
else.
And, there's a lot of inherent pressure in education to be the jack of all trades and to know everything. And my example is data. I can do it. I know how to do a spreadsheet. I could really grind. My brain would hurt, but I could figure out data. But man, I don't like that work at all. And there are people that love it and they're so good at it. And so if I'm leading a building, I need somebody to do the data because if I did it, it would be half-hearted and not great. So it's kind of completing that framework using the people that you have with you.
Yes. Yes. I remember I was working with a kindergarten group. Well, I was working with all the grade levels in this elementary school, and they're coming in during their PLC time. And they came in one day crying. And I was like, oh gosh, this is not the same. This is different. So I pitched what I was going to do with them and said, talk to me. And it got to a point that we started talking about what are you good at doing? What do you love? So we lived in the S and the H. And one of the teachers, when I fast forward, I said, okay, when I got to this point, I said, okay, I want you to share what you're not good at doing. And I want you to, for example, if you know that so and so is good at something you're not, or they have a passion for something, I want you to consider going to them and saying, hey, I know you're really good at this. I'm not. Is there a way you can help me? Either help me be better, or is it
Mhm,
something you'd love to do where I could take something off your plate and you take
mhm.
this? And this one particular teacher looked at me and she said, so, LaVonna, let me get this straight. You want me to go to her and tell her what I'm not good at doing? She said, do you know how that makes me look? And in that
Huh,
moment, I went, oh, I get it. I get it. And I said, okay, what if we flip the script? I said, Sarah, who was on my left, I said, if she came to you and said to you, I'm not good at this, could you help me? What would you think? And she goes, oh my goodness, I would love to help. Like she looks at her, she goes, I would love to help you. And I
right.
was like, see, so sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves of how we're going to look, we forget what we might actually do for the other person.
Exactly,
And so
exactly.
that can be a flip the script part.
Right. Okay, I don't know where the last half an hour went, but I'm gonna wrap up with a question. I'm gonna throw this right back at you. This was a question that you ask your groups. What is your measure of success, LaVonna Roth?
Personally,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
measure of success is when I leave with the energy because I know that I delivered energy that brought energy back. And I would say one of the hardest ones is when the energy doesn't come back And it doesn't, I know it's not a reflection of me always,
Right.
but it does get me to reflect, okay, so what could I have done different or need to consider for this group? But
Right.
yeah, no, that's
Right.
to me, a measure of success is that it is when I have someone walk up to me and tell me, like Jen, in the beginning, you said 8 or 9 years ago. I'm like, holy cow, you
Right.
remember that? I was in Missouri for several events speaking, and I had a woman come up to me. She said, "You won't remember this," and she showed me. She had the Shine bracelet on. She said,
Ah!
"This for 5 years," and I was like, "Wait, what?" And then the biggest thing that opened my heart, I have to share, this was I was sitting with all women who it was part of this conference was a women's in leadership part, and I had spoken there in July. And I don't always know the impact and effect. And I got tears in my eyes because one of them had made a comment about some things that I won't share here because I don't want to share her story. But I looked at her and I go, wait a minute, you remember that? And she's like, LaVonna, we had Firefly t-shirts because of it. And another one jumped and go, oh my gosh, we have the candles going, like the kind that battery operated. Oh, and we put lights in a jar to remind us that we shine and the Firefly effect. And I was like, I had tears in my eyes. I was like, you guys, I had no idea. I have
Right.
no idea because I find many times I don't know.
Right.
And so that's just another it's when you find out, holy cow, like it did make a difference.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. Yes, and I think again the energy you bring into a room and the way that you can speak to people's insecurities in while lifting up their strengths. We all have the insecurities. They're there. Of course they are, but we certainly don't need to perseverate on them. And nobody needs to hire you to come in and say, "Let's talk about all your insecurities. Let's talk about the things you do bring to the table."
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, LaVonna, tell our listeners where they can find you. I referenced earlier your website, but let's put it in your words. On social, your website, where can people find you?
Yes. So igniteyoursshine.com. You can go there and learn more about some of the things I was talking about, but then also connect with us if you're interested in, me coming and speaking for your group or your school district pre-planning, whatever it is. And then I am on social media primarily. I'm on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So you can do my name, LaVonna, which likely it'll pop up and see me, but
Right.
LaVonna Roth. And just so you know, it's LaVonna, and then Roth is Roth. But then it's also on LinkedIn, it's Ignite Your Shine. And on Instagram, it's Ignite Your Shine Now.
Perfect. And you are going to be at ASCD and ISD in San Antonio? No.
At this time, no,
Ah,
I'm not able to be. So, yeah.
well, darn it. Okay, well, I'll get you next time. And listeners, I wish you could see. Will and I have never jumped into video for these interviews, but behind LaVonna is an image of a gorgeous lioness. I wish you could see her space, her working space there. I just there it is. Yep. Make your working space lovely because I think it just creates energy. She's got some plants. She's got a very complicated calendar in her background. Put a lioness in your workspace is my takeaway. So thank you, LaVonna. It has been a true pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you. Same to you. And I'm cheering all of you on that are listening. And please know you're not alone. You have so many cheerleaders when you feel like they aren't there.
Thank you, everyone.